Ishveen Anand, CEO, founder of Open Sponsorship. Did I say that right, by the way?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow, I nailed it. I'm impressed right there. Well, thank you so much for taking. I know. Thank you so much for taking time to spend with me today and just learn a little bit more about yourself and your business. And so I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's tee it up. Talk about, and I guess you could really take it from college and then on to where you are today, because I think that's the bridge for I think a lot of people on where they want to go. What was that? So talk about Oxford and your time there, but what was that aha moment that you had about the industry and where you wanted to go within the industry?
Yeah, so I left Oxford when I graduated. I did what most people did and follow the career paths that were set out for me, whether it was banking, accounting, law, or consulting. And for me, it was consulting, management consulting. So I did that for 2.5 years. And it was really, I think, recession hit in 2008. And it really occurred to me that I could be doing the same thing for a long time, or I could take a jump in my career at that point where everyone was fairly miserable, the city was down, and I could leave and do something I wanted to do. And I genuinely thought, okay, I'll come back in like 6 months, a year, and I'll pick up the job I already had, or I'll come back to this. And when I moved to India to become a sports agent at that point, and realized that this wasn't just like a phase and it was actually a career I wanted to pursue. It was amazing. I was like, wow, I didn't actually realize like people could do jobs like being a sports agent with my background. And I think that was a really special moment, realizing that this was something I wanted to pursue properly and it wasn't just like a gap year kind of thing.
So what was that? How did you bridge it? I mean, did you meet somebody who, or was it a business? Did you seek them as far as getting involved as being an agent, or how did that work?
Yeah, so I was lucky that when I made the decision that I wanted to work in sports, well, I mean, I sent emails that were unanswered. I must have applied to jobs that I didn't get. I can't really remember right now, but I started talking to people saying, I really wanted to work in sports, and it just so happened that this one guy I knew someone in India, and he was like, well, that might be an interesting opportunity. So I sent my resume and got this job. So I think I was quite lucky to get it, but it just shows that if you there's always someone who's ready to give you that chance.
What would you say, if you had to give yourself advice now back then, what would you have tell yourself, and like, here's some of the skill sets that you should have had or that would have helped you move along the process a little bit quicker?
Yeah, I think I was pretty close-minded
Yeah.
as to what careers I could have gone into, and it's not a bad thing. I do not regret at all. Like I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't had those 2.5 years experience in like a bigger company with
Yeah.
someone who trained me in how to write a good email, how to do PowerPoint, how to use Excel. I would never change that. And I actually tell
Yeah.
people like, don't follow your passion too soon. Um,
Yeah.
get that real world experience.
Yeah.
Get that corporate experience. But I think what I would have probably should have done is I should have known that there was a company called the IMG that
Yeah.
existed when I was 18. Like I just didn't know about that world because I thought I was going to go into investment banking or consulting, and I didn't even explore these other opportunities. So I suppose if you realize that, like, yeah, I think people today are a bit more savvy. Like, you could work for a sports team, you could work for these guys. Start building up your network, but don't just run into like ticket sales because it's in sports. If you can and you have the ability, go work for an Ernst and Young or a bank just to get some of that experience before moving into the sports world.
Yeah, I agree. I just had this conversation the other day, how valuable not only just real practical experiences, and it's transitional and
Yeah,
transferable over to, and working for a corporate structure is exactly right. It's just that. It's you just get structure, you get a process.
yeah,
Jumping out as an entrepreneur, people think it's so sexy right now, but it's hard and it's scary.
yeah.
And anyway, you talked about IMG. I think a lot of kids and young professionals, even just the general population out there, you might be selling cars for 5 years, but everybody automatically thinks that they should be working for a team or a league because a lot of that's all they know. They don't
Uh,
understand the power of agencies behind that. That there's a whole second industry within the sports industry that is massive. And so, anyways, I'm
yeah.
glad you brought that up. So you're over in India. What sports and what are you representing over there?
Mostly cricket because that's what's big
Uh-huh.
there. I did a bit of work in
Yeah.
golf and field hockey, but
Hmm.
the biggest chunk of my work was in cricket.
Hmm. Were you on the management side, or were you more on the sponsorship? Let me see, what brands I can line up with these athletes.
Yeah, so I was mostly we sat in the middle, so we would do the deals and then also help execute them. And we did it
Hmm.
for teams, leagues, as well as athletes.
Gotcha. And then what was
Yeah.
that moment when you were over in India and you said, I just I got to come to the States and do it over here. I've conquered India now. Now I want to conquer the United States. How was that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was actually, I moved back to England in between, which was, I was born
Gotcha.
and brought up in England. And it was
Uh-huh.
actually because, I don't know if you've worked with any people from India, but your professionalism takes a massive hit. Like being late is just normal.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I had this realization that I wanted to get back to being a bit more professional and I should move back
Hmm.
to England to do it. Moving to the US was completely by chance. I actually, kind of cliche, but I met my husband and I moved over to America for him. He's born and brought up in New York. And
Hmm.
I was a bit clueless. Like, I didn't realize that the sports world was so different. So, when I got married to
Hmm.
him, I was like, yeah, I'll carry on doing what I'm doing. And then I got here and I was like, wow, like, you guys don't know cricket, you don't know field hockey, or you don't know it as
I
I know
agree.
it. And I don't know what American football is. Football for us is something different. So it was a bit of a culture shock. When
Hmm.
I moved across. And that's what actually ultimately led to open sponsorship because that was my second aha moment when I realized that if you are not in the sponsorship world or the sports world, it doesn't matter your skill set or your aptitude or anything else, like you're not going to get deals done. Like athletes are inaccessible, people don't answer their phone, and so it really made me realize like why is there not like an Airbnb or an Uber or Match.com for our industry?
Hmm. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I took a look at the site, and you hit everything. You're spot on because I've been on both sides of that table, and you provide. It's that's the one piece. I think this is the vehicle that's missing, and it seems to me. And I wanted to let you talk, and I apologize for talking about this, but I'm excited about it because it makes so much sense. Because there's so many kind of those B minus C level brands that are just up and coming and starting, and they don't know how to get to the brand, the property, the property, the athlete, the team without some assistance or paying a lot of money to do that. And the athletes, there's those B level, C level practice squad guys that aren't general that need to be connected, but no one's interested in them, or they may seem that, or their agent doesn't want to spend the time on that because there's no return from them. So, am I headed in the right direction with this? But I'm going to let you talk about it. So,
Yeah, no, no. Listen, 100%. When
yeah,
we started Open Sponsorship, the vision was like there should be one place that anyone can go to
yeah.
find what's available. Right, like that's it. Like if you ask me what we're creating the largest, most transparent marketplace for sports sponsorship because there's the same way that you can hire people through an open marketplace like a LinkedIn, or the same way that you can, book a flight on Kayak or book a taxi on Uber. Why can you not find out what's available in our world in sports sponsorship online? And so that's what we're creating. But once we started, what we realized is that the level of need for our service among the athletes and the agencies is huge because, as you said, these guys spend all their time representing their one big guy, and they don't give any love to their 95 other percent of athletes. Maybe they help them with their contracts, of course, and that
Mhm.
one Nike deal. But, I don't blame them. Like, if I was an agent and I had like 20 guys on my roster, I'm going to spend all my time, the majority of my time on my big guy as well, right? Like,
Right.
the other guys, I'll keep them happy in the most simple way I can.
So what have you found from brands, are they having better luck now with matching up to properties and teams or with athletes?
So we're focused on the athletes over
Okay.
teams and events. And the reason being is because for teams, the price point's a bit high, right? So
Yeah.
minimum $100,000 spend to work with any team. And that kind of transaction is not happening as easily on a website. So a good
Hmm.
analogy for that is when first these websites like TripAdvisor came out, you weren't booking, the first users weren't booking a penthouse in Vegas for, $1,000 a night on it. They were booking, the $100 hotel rooms, right? And then over
Hmm.
time, as you build loyalty and trust and supply base and all of that stuff, then you get to the bigger things. So for us, we're still working in that like $1,000 to $5,000 range, or even lower. So
Hmm.
we're not really catered to these big deals like these $100,000 deals. We're working with brands who want to spend a few $100s, a few $1,000s, and get good value, and that's mostly happening with athletes. So the
Hmm.
business model works for teams. It's just the price point of the buyers has to go up, which will come over time.
Have any of the properties reached out to you, like the properties meaning the grassroots properties? So, these massive volleyball tournaments and these massive basketball and soccer tournaments, run by club and promoters who are always struggling to find sponsors. And, there's such a big market out there for these guys who have they have these national grassroots tournaments that have between 50 to 100,000, sometimes kids. If you have brands that are looking for that demographic, have they shown any interest in this at all yet?
Yeah, we have quite a few events that we'd call those events, and we
Hmm.
definitely have quite a few. Some like basketball camp, some that are athlete managed, some otherwise a ton of like
Gotcha.
local ATP tours and things like that. I would
Gotcha.
say um, it's less of a quick transactional sell. So
Gotcha.
there's a difficulty. The typical conversation always there has been, "Hey, um, what have you got to offer?" And then they'll turn around and say, "Okay, well, what does the brand have to spend?" And the brand would say, "Well, what do you have to offer? Then I can define budget." And so, in a way, we almost need to kind of make that very transactional, like, "Hey, this is what your defined offering is. This is the price," and then a brand can quickly say yes and no. And so there's still a little bit of work to be done there, but yeah, we definitely have quite a few of those opportunities on our site.
So how do you is this kind of the concept? It just seems to me from a pure business standpoint, there seems like there's so many different verticals that could kind of come off of this because the concept is great, is matching, it's just matching brands and people together. Is that I'm sure you're so focused on this right now, but I'm an entrepreneur too. So, is
Yeah.
that something that's part of your long-term plan?
So for us, it's about matching brands to sports.
Uh,
Everyone in our team believes in sports as the vehicle,
mhm,
right? So, whether you are a brand and you want to work with a local athlete, a major athlete, an event, like you said, like a huge basketball camp, a team, a
mhm,
league, international, global, regional, local,
mhm,
whatever it may be, we believe that sports has traditionally been reserved as a marketing tool for the biggest brands, your JP Morgan Chases, Verizons, Pepsi's, Cokes.
mhm,
We want everyone, big and small, to use sports. And traditionally, small companies have not used sports because it's been too complicated, too expensive, just,
mhm.
it's not been accessible. And so that's our thing, which is sports. When we've conquered sports, and sports makes up 70% of sponsorship. So really, like, we have a long way to go in sports. After sports, yes, we'll think about music or TV or whatever else. But really, I mean, we have so much work to do in sports, so that is our focus.
So you said something to me before about when you first came over here, there was definitely like a shock of, wow, it's almost like this little bubble in the United States. And in majority of my career, I did global. Not only did I live in England and played American football in England, but I worked for the NFL on an international level. And I just saw that how sophisticated, which surprised me was the reverse engineer, what you said, was I was surprised how sophisticated the rest of the world was with sports sponsorship and hospitality. It almost seemed like they were 10 years ahead.
I'm
Mhm.
going to use that.
Please do. Absolutely. Yeah. So, not only does England get the first crack at all the US music that came over here, but I
Mm.
think it was, there was more of a sophistication to it, I thought. And it was less of a good old boy. That's how I kind of felt like it was to me. And even as I matured as a business professional and dealing with, FIBAs and some of the national governing bodies, and it just felt different to me, and how they approach sponsorship. So,
I
anyways.
think the leagues are less powerful there, and so
Mhm,
you see a lot more activity and a lot more innovation by the teams. So
mhm,
what was surprising to me was over in the rest of the world, your governing bodies are very powerful, but they obviously
mhm,
don't control everything. So, think about
mhm,
FIFA, FA, the International Cricket
mhm,
Council, the International Hockey Federation, and then on a local level, so like BCCI for in the Cricket Board of India or whatever it may be. And so
mhm,
because the leagues are powerful and then they give a lot to the teams and then the teams will do a lot to innovate. Here, your NBA, your NHL, NFL are so powerful.
mhm,
Um, you
mhm.
know, like most people don't even realize that, the NBA is not the US governing body of
Right.
basketball, right? That's like, I think USAB, but no one knows about them. And so the NBA is a profitable business that is run very well as a league. And so as I think what happens is maybe you get less innovation at the team level because so much is governed by the league. Whereas,
Mhm,
what happens think about football, Manchester United were light years ahead of everyone else in terms of
mhm,
sponsorship. And that made Manchester City catch up, Chelsea, Arsenal, and everyone else. So one team could really drive that. Whereas
mhm.
here, you don't really have that. Like, no one team is like super doing something amazing because the NBA is so powerful and the NBA is doing awesome stuff, but you're not seeing it you're not seeing it for every team and every level.
It's true. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones would argue that point, but I know where you're headed with that, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Do you feel, from your perspective, and I know in England, the one thing I felt like, once you cut out that college level on how important college athletics and big of a business and industry it is here in the United States, do you feel
Yeah,
that adds a little bit more to the uniqueness of, say, I always say that, like a Man U was, if you blended Penn State and Michigan and you put all those together on top of the Cowboys and the Yankees, that's Man U. And it's the passion, because there isn't a college
yeah,
that take that attention away from that one team. Is that
yeah,
Am I headed in the
100%.
right direction? Okay.
Yeah, I think the college system here is amazing. I also think um, the fantasy aspect here is like nothing I've seen anywhere else.
Mhm.
Obviously there is like a lot of drafts and betting that goes on in England, but not to the
Right.
passion level here. So I think the fantasy aspect of the sports has really driven viewership and passion, and I think that is like unparalleled anywhere else in the world.
Oh, they are some gambling fools in England, that's for sure. They are.
Ah.
All right, so your perspective on esports. I just think I know this wasn't really what our call was gonna be about, but you're so
Yeah.
interesting to talk to because you give such a different perspective. What's your take on it?
It's obviously huge. You can't deny that. I do not
Yeah.
think it will become mainstream for people
Mm,
30, like non-millennials. I
mhm,
think it will be just something that a lot of people don't get um,
mhm,
because it is so different. But that's fine because think about like a ton of the population doesn't watch golf, right? And golf is
mhm,
huge. But how many
mhm,
people watch golf, right? Like a lot of people don't. So what I would say is that initially I felt like everyone has to watch esports and everyone should know about it. And esports has now been around in a mainstream way for about 2 years, and I wouldn't
mhm.
necessarily say it's got bigger in mainstream ways. I think it's getting huge, like bigger followings, and its following is key. But I would not necessarily say that it's gonna take over as like the next NFL anytime soon. I mean, that might be
Mhm.
controversial, but I feel like in the last 2 years that I've known about esports, it's not been much more. It's not grown exponentially in the mainstream arena that I operate in.
Yeah. So you're not seeing brands aren't asking you about esports right now.
They are, but it's also more like I know I should do this. I
Yeah.
should do this because it's hot, rather than like every one of my customers is being influenced by esports and therefore like I'm missing out. It's more like I get the need to do this. Um, Drone racing, I do think is going to become big. Like you see, VR is big, and so look, I'm not denying like esports is huge. But I do believe it's like it's just not for everyone. It lives in its own world. There are a lot of people who just will not convert to that side.
I, I get it. I'm glad you said this because I'm on the fence about it too. I'm curious. I think like a lot of people, it's everybody said the same thing about advertising in digital media 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Now, now it's outpacing traditional media ad spend.
Yeah.
But so it's like it's curious. If you got your job on the line, if you're making a big bet on esports, I would sit and wait on that. But I don't know. It's just interesting. I can't follow the fighting games, and that kind of turns me off. But to sit there and watch two really good Madden players, I'd sit there. I'm gonna admit it. I would watch it. It's kind of crazy to think about. I sound like a 12-year-old, but I would watch it. That's entertainment to me. So
So
anyway.
I think you would watch it, and I think that's why people can make investments in it, like the sports teams,
Yeah.
because they already have a user base to put that in front of. So,
Yeah.
are you seeking it out? Maybe not. But if you're if you're a sports team, like let's say you support the Sixers, and suddenly in the Sixers stadium they give you like a free ticket to go watch esports to hook you in, like you'll go watch it. So the people who are making moves in it now are the guys that can influence the distribution and influence that support base, whereas brands are riding on the back of it once it's big. So that's why I think it's like slightly slower in our world than it is in the investment world or the team acquisition world.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to put your finger on how to monetize unless you own, you have the
Yeah,
eyeballs and you have the memberships. But what's interesting is that I do know that even video games in general, just FIFA. I mean, kids are playing. They know all the international players not from watching TV, but from playing a video game. That's how they know who the good and
yeah,
bad players are. The majority of them, and that's a beautiful and interesting thing in and of itself about creating branding and opportunities and passion for a sport through participating digitally. It, it's so I think that part of it is going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out in the next 10 years. Anyways.
yeah. No, 100%, and I'll probably be proven wrong as well.
I know. I wasn't, yeah, it was like I'm making statements now. I'm supposed to be interviewing you, not just but so what else do you think is the next big thing out there that you have your eyeballs on?
um, that's a really good question. Um,
Is it how is it how what let me rephrase that and let me ask you to this from a deliverable and activation standpoint.
yeah.
Are you finding that it's still important for brands to be on-site sampling, or are they still kind of stuck or trying to figure out the digital, how do we engage in social media through an athlete with our brand and try to get engagement that way? Like
Yeah,
which way do you
100.
see them going?
Very digital because it's
Yeah,
trackable. That is the main
yeah,
thing. And also just because a lot of the brands that are being set up now, when we speak to them, they don't have, traditionally what would happen is you would have your brand. They would spend a lot of money. They would have experiential agencies, on-ground agencies, creative agencies, and all of this stuff. Today, it's so easy to get straight connected with the content creator or, the person who's going to like help you out that I don't like. I was talking to a brand recently and I was saying, oh, there was this opportunity and maybe you could have someone handing out samples. And they were like, we are not set up to hire an agency to hand out flyers. Like, we're a website with like 20 people. And it was just it's that realization that, these brands are not set up to be, even if there is value in that, that's not how they operate. They operate by creating a creative in-house, A/B testing it, putting it out and seeing it like perform in 24 hours. They're not like ordering merchandise for 1,000 people and, the old school way of marketing. And so there is a market for that, and there's so much value in that. It's just the brands spending money today. They used to Facebook advertising where they can log in the morning and see like, okay, how did my ad perform yesterday?
Yeah, it's true. It's interesting to see the whole thing shifting over, and um, I definitely saw it on my side with North American Sports Group. We were losing out on dollars because we didn't have the internal support to handle the digital piece. We could sample all day long. We just didn't do the
Yeah.
digital piece very well until I had to create a digital vertical within. But it was just interesting to see how that plays out. So, all right. So, final question, and this is going to be a great way to kind of bring it back around. Advice to recent graduates, soon to be graduates, someone out there who wants to get back into or wants to, for the first time, be in the sports industry. You, as a entrepreneur and business owner, what do you look for? What are the top skill sets that you look for in a new hire? Is it more sales or more savvy from graphic design, SEO, and the digital space? So what skill sets would you recommend people to really hone in on?
Okay, so what I would first say is take a step back and say, if you want to get back, if you want to work in sports, sports is huge, right? Sports is the guy selling tickets at MSG is in sports, as well as the broadcaster of Bleacher Report, as well as a sports agent, as well as someone who works for a VR company, right? So figure out like, what do you want to do? Do you want to be in sales? Do you want to be in marketing? Do you want to be in social media? Do you want to be in operations? Who do you want to work for? Like, try and really segment, like, what does that job profile look like? Because when people turn up to me and say, I want to work in sports, I'm like, we work in an office that we never leave. I like don't, it's very different from the guy who's sport,
Yeah.
working for a team and being part of their hospitality crew is also sports. But that job looks like 1,000,000% different to what I do. So it's just like, it's too generic to say I work in sports. So you need to figure out like, okay, I want to work in this aspect of sports, and then what is the skill set I already have? Like, if you tell me you want to work in sales, like, you better have sales experience before. If you tell me you want to work in social media, you better have 20,000 followers at least on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, Facebook beforehand. So it's not good enough to turn up and say, I want to work in sports and this without any experience in either. Like, have proven experience in one of the, like, don't turn to me and say, like, I used to be a banker for Merrill Lynch and now I want to do sales for you. Like, what? Like where is that correlation? So
Right.
I think have some sort of skill set that can translate and know why you want to work for the company you're applying to.
Well, great answer. Very direct. You are a true New Yorker now, I got to tell you.
Ah.
You're a true New Yorker. Well, thank you so much for your time. You're definitely somebody that I think is going to make a big splash here in this industry, and doing what you're doing and working in India and going back from Great Britain, now coming to the United States to do this. Boy, I tell you, I give you a lot of credit and a lot of respect for you. Really, you're definitely someone to watch in this industry. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for really kind words. Thank you so much.
All right, cheers. And you know what? Just hold on for a second, okay? Thanks again.
Yeah.
Hold on.